not a bad workaround.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
plan B.
By the way, hi Ashley. I didn't say hi when you.
Hey, how are you?
But anyway,
Hello. Yeah, sorry. Didn't want to interrupt or anything.
no worries. We're just making sure that we're good for the dates for the first Docs Clinic and for the Docs Jam on October 7th. Sorry, I said October 1st. It's October 7th. So I'm inclined to keep things as they are, but Derek, you were the one who raised the concern, and I just want to make sure that your concern is validated and heard, and that you still feel good about things. So
yeah, actually, I was just checking with Pedro too, because one of the things I wanted to get figured out was like, I wonder what because when I went through his PyTest documentation and his PyTest blog, I noticed he didn't have examples or things pointing to docs tests. And so I kind of just got some feedback from him today, and I'm actually testing the commands out, and they're working out great. So cool thing is that, because I was trying to, I haven't yet done an internal docs clinic. And I kind of wanted to do that to get it mapped out before our public one, which is scheduled for the 30th.
The 30th.
And the other thing is I wanted to troubleshoot one more thing, and because Pedro wanted to see if a certain issue was resolved, and I don't know if maybe even, which has to do with how pre-commit right now, or at least last time I ran it, it had this weird Knox Pi 2 issue, which might be resolved now because I haven't run it in a while. And so anyway, I wanted to get these things done because these are like the primary tools for the local automated testing and for properly committing to the salt repo a new change. So the good thing is I'm getting that kind of figured out, and then I'd be able to kind of, I don't know, one thing we do have to do then is we have to schedule an internal window. It'll probably be a little bit more haphazard, kind of like, here's sort of what I want to do in a docs clinic, and this is kind of the walkthrough, and kind of through it, I'd probably, with feedback of other people attending internally, get an idea of like, okay, cool, then this will be the best way to go about it when I do the actual clinic. And I think the idea is that we still want the clinic to be more almost like tutorial based, right? Where rather than like an open forum where I would just be like, here are different ways to contribute to docs.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why it has to come before the documentation jam is that we're going to, like, the whole idea is that we're showing you how to get spun up to contribute to the docs, right? And so that tutorial piece is necessary going into the documentation jam. Is that correct? That's why it's a dependency that we get that first docs clinic done before the docs jam?
Yeah, because it was going to be an idea of being able to share to people in the period leading up to the jam and during the jam if they hadn't seen it yet, or if they kind of have never contributed yet.
So it's funny because it's like a couple of dominoes. We've got the internal docs jam, the real docs jam, the user-facing, community-facing one, and then we've got the community docs jam. So these three things kind of have to happen in order for the docs jam to be successful. And so just to give us like a sense of time, we've got 2 weeks before the docs jam is supposed to be, which seems like a pretty nice cushion of time, especially if I'm hearing you right. It sounds like you're feeling pretty good and confident about going into that internal docs jam. But maybe I'm misreading your body language or your voice tone, but you sound like,
I think, like, I have an idea, as long as that internal clinic is probably is also used as a sort of almost like open brainstorming, because I'll go through what I think I think the clinic should be, and then I'll go through all the commands and things I'd like to show. Because the other thing is it would be, Cassandra, if I understand correctly, would be streaming that when the public clinic would be streamed on Twitch, kind of like we do our other clinics. and then we'd be able to then refer to that video because it would stay on Twitch at least for, I mean, what period of time does a video stay on Twitch for?
At least 2 weeks, but what I'd figured is I would do it just like I do the open hours in these work group meetings, and we'd set it up as a Zoom meeting that we could record. And then that way we'd have a permanent recording that we own. Getting,
oh, yes.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to put it elsewhere too, on like YouTube or something.
Exactly. Getting videos from Twitch can be kind of a pain, and so I prefer to just, Zoom just automatically emails me the video and says, hey, your recording's ready to go, and then I can download it and edit it and stuff.
No, and I really like that. We're doing it that way too, because then I could simply just join a Zoom call and not have to be concerned like, oh crap, is my local setup gonna properly work with Twitch when it comes to audio and everything else? Because if it's just simply Zoom, the Zoom integration that you're hosting, that's all set up with it, then I won't have to be concerned about it.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, as long as the settings are set up right at the beginning and Zoom doesn't make changes, which Zoom likes to change things on me, we shouldn't have much of a problem with getting everything ready to go.
That reminds me, I should probably check if there are updates to Zoom lately that I should be applying.
So, so it seems to me like the ideal timeline for doing the first internal docs clinic, the run through, would be next week. When I say that, does it strike fear in your heart? Or do you like, I think I could do that?
I think it can be done. Just like I said, like the meeting would be used both to sort of run a mock clinic, but also to talk about and plan for the actual clinic, just because time frame wise of free time outside of like those blocked off meetings, I probably won't have too much time. So yeah, I mean, and so that, I think it would be fine, because I kind of know, I just noticed an issue today actually, that I have like 2 or 3 things I've noticed in the docs that would be good candidates to walk through, that I'll walk through in the mock clinic and not submit a change for, and then redo them in the actual clinic, which to like, so that I could have PRs and stuff submitted so that people could see like the full walkthrough of, here's how I did this simple change, and then here's how I did it all locally. Because we talked about the different approaches to this, right? Is that someone could open an issue if they see a problem, for example. Someone might see something in an RST file that needs to just be modified. And what if it's like something very small and simple, where they could either do it in their own web browser and submit it, because that'll automatically, I think when you do it through there, that auto verifies, because you know how we have GPG signing? If you do it, the edits through the GitHub browser itself, you'll automatically get the little verified check. That's kind of like what you see when you're GPG signing locally too. And so I'd be able to show like, here's that minor change, the least amount of resistance. And then there'd be, now let's bring it down locally. And also let's show where when it's a Python module, like when it's generated from doc strings, where's that located? I won't be able to get this in because there's a change that's come to mind that I just tested, but I think we could actually add to our build docs automation a simple line of code that will place a link into all of the RST docs that are generated from doc strings, a link back to where that Python code actually is located. Because I think that's caused a lot of confusion for people. When I was first starting to contribute to SALT, it did for me too, because it's just not clear. Because when you go to edit on GitHub, you go to this kind of page that says, auto module, or wait, where's this code coming from? And then someone has to kind of dig in to find out where the doc string is, where that documentation is generated from. So anyway, I think it could still be done. as long as we get that locked into the calendar for next week for a internal docs
Okay.
internal docs clinic. And I don't know if Cassandra can be there. Well, I don't know. I guess we need to figure out who could be the key good feedback people, because I want at least maybe one core. I don't know if maybe Wayne or I want someone who to be there who could say, who's just like who is a contributor or part of the core team, because then they might have better feedback to say we should include this as part of the docs clinic.
I mean, I plan to be there. I'm not sure how much. And I mean, I guess I do have the feedback from what a lot of our contributors have said to us, so definitely plan on me being there as long as it's Monday looks hairy, the rest of the week's fine.
Can we nail down a tentative time for next week? That will answer a lot of questions about who's available.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
And let's decide who's going to schedule it, because that was confusing.
I know a bunch of people there. I don't want to. I don't want to schedule just because and if I did, I'd have to like get someone else's Zoom link, because I just have a limited.
Cassandra, would you be comfortable
Yeah,
doing the
I can schedule
scheduling?
it.
Okay.
Yep.
I just didn't want to volunteer you, but yeah. So what looks good for when we want to do it?
What? Well, who all needs to be there?
So we want one core.
Okay.
We need Derek.
Okay.
It could be good to I think I would love to be there personally. I would just like to be there if I can be.
I would like you and Derek and me all to be there.
Yes.
So maybe we go based off of our schedules.
Okay, so let's say we're the 3 core people that for sure need to be there, and then we can see who's available from the core team to come.
Yep. So Wednesdays, engineering has no meeting Wednesdays, but I'm happy to do this on a Wednesday if that works for other people. Next Thursday's actually
Weirdly,
not
my
bad.
Tuesday looks so nice. So Tuesday or Wednesday, even the Thursday, I can shift things around if we need to.
I could do Tuesday.
My Tuesday looks very good too, actually.
Okay.
Let's shoot for Tuesday then. And we need a 2-hour or a 3-hour block?
Not a 3-hour.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. I just remember the last one was like a really big block that we had scheduled, but
yeah, I think since this isn't the full clinic, I don't know. I think it should be either an hour or an hour and a half, maybe, unless I mean 2 hours would be max, and we could always cut out early. I just don't know.
Yeah.
2 hours might make it harder to also get another person involved, but and I don't want people to think this is going to be a long slog of just watching Derek.
That's fair.
Type stuff in. So
my inclination is to schedule it for 2 hours, and if it wraps early, it wraps early.
yeah.
At least for at least that time is then blocked off on our calendars.
Okay.
And it looks like, I mean, anytime looking at all of our calendars.
I'm pretty free that day, so I'm good anytime.
I'm free. I have my DevRel meetup, and then I'm free from noon onwards. Noon Mountain.
Noon in Mountain? Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll do like maybe 12:30. Does that work for everybody? Or 1?
Works
I don't
great.
know what lunch schedules are like, or if people care about that.
I just work around my schedule generally.
Y'all be fine, and then we'll just have to see who from core would be a good candidate to. I don't know. I know that Wayne that day is doing a test clinic, his own test clinic for like 2 hours at one point. So I don't know, probably not him, so that he doesn't have to be in like 2 back-to-back big meetings or something.
Oh, and I think his test clinic actually is at the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
As. Oh no, it is. I know it's
So is Wayne your first choice, or who would you like as who's your first choice?
Wayne was my first choice just because he runs a test clinic.
That's fair.
And so he has not only experience running clinics, but also of contributing and running tests and stuff all the time, which I mean, I imagine the core engineers in general are familiar with, but his perspective, I think, would be the most valuable just because of also running those clinics and then getting kind of probably the feedback that he's gotten through them.
Tyler might also be a good alternate
Oh yeah, yeah.
because he's done a lot of it too, if that's what you're concerned about.
And Tyler's contributed to Salt Open a bit, right? So I suppose he'd also have good feedback there. So
Yeah.
I guess
More than
Tyler
a
would be
bit.
good alternate.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's good.
I know he's doing a lot of the item and other projects, so I wasn't sure if like if he was in that one too.
He's also
It's
kind
like-
of our OG Twitch guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like riding a bicycle, right, Gareth? He won't forget how to use salt, right?
I mean, if Gareth wants to help, he's an option too, since you're sitting right here. But
Yeah, no,
I'll let
I
everybody
was
know.
only partially listening there. Keep getting distracted by things, but yeah, I don't know what I'm agreeing to, but I can help out as well.
Well, the idea we're trying to see about who would be good candidates from the core team, like at least one person who could come to the internal docs clinic so that they could provide feedback on like from a contributor perspective, because I'm going to be running things like the Nox commands that I got from Pedro that are related to docs, making sure pre-commit is set up, things like that from a local dev perspective. And I didn't know if through the clinic there might be insight from a core engineer on like, hey, this might be a good way to do something, or this some kind of feedback that could be included in the clinic. So I just didn't know who would be best to have involved. Or who would
Gareth's
be available.
calendar looks a little nicer than Wayne's, to be fair. But yeah. I'm peeking
Yeah,
at
I
your
also
calendar.
don't.
He's like next week at Gareth though. So.
I'm not a hard proponent of the no meeting Wednesday either. So if it has to be Wednesday, it has to be Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point we're looking at Tuesday, so
Tuesday works fine,
Okay.
I think.
maybe we can make it so that I don't know.
Could be the four of us.
We
then,
could
right?
make it so that Wayne could at least attend part of it. Like it, because if we do 12:30 like you were suggesting, Cassandra, Wayne could at least pitch in and come to the very beginning and just say hi and help out.
We could also
technically.
do noon.
That'd be
I'll just
fine.
bounce from. That's what I'll do. I'll do it at noon, and that gives Wayne an hour.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to though is I do want to talk. I know Sage said she can't come to this meeting. I think the working group here today, but I did want to check with her about the contributor guide stuff because I haven't had. We've all been pretty busy, so I think at some point we should review and take a look at some of those updates we want to put in the contributor guide, because a lot of those pages are it's almost like the contributor guide is a jumping off point to all those other pages related to contributing. And if that gets kind of solidified better, because that's part of what I want to show in the docs clinic is that, I don't know, the contributor guide is a good one. I can still mention like go
That's
to
fair.
this contributing guide here.
Yeah.
So you'd like
But-
to have that in place before the public docs clinic?
And if not the public docs clinic, the jam, if it would be pushed further out.
That
because-
seems really reasonable.
Yeah.
Can
What-
I support you in that effort? We can maybe chat about it sometime, and that way if you suddenly have something crazy going on where there's a lot of demands on your time, I can swap in and help, because I don't think I'll be too busy. I have busy things this week, but after my release tasks are done, I shouldn't be too bad. And I could probably help with the contributor guide, and that's pretty easy for me to do.
All right. What in particular? Because I think we've definitely established where we'd had this vision to hopefully have like a whole brand new contributor guide by the end of Magnesium. That's probably not going to happen. So
Right.
what are we going to identify, like what areas of the contributor guide we're going to improve? this is like my MVP focus for the next couple weeks is this contributor guide. So
So let's talk
Um,
about it.
Well,
Yeah.
it could even be then. Well, I guess I don't know. I could just say that, hey, the contributor guide is under construction right now, but this is kind of where the main location is. Because did we go with that GitHub / contributing? Because right now there's a lot in the directory itself. There's like a contributing RST one. There's a contributing MD inside the GitHub subdirectory. There's a hacking guide that kind of talks about contributor guide type things. And so I didn't know like where, because I think is that what we agreed on, was that, hey, the main one that people will at least go to as their starting place would be GitHub's default, which is GitHub's defaulting to the .github contributing MD file, right?
oh no, we have, as of right now, we have the default set as the one at docs.saltstack.com. I just dropped a link in chat. But if that's not the correct one, we can change that link.
Oh, wait. Okay. Oh, yeah. So, all right. So then should I point them? Because what will happen is, because here's the other thing I'll show quick. Is that when you go to GitHub's default contribute page, they have a link to our contributing guide that gets auto-generated, which points to this one here. And so I didn't know if what the idea was going to be is that we were going to maybe modify that contributing, like update it to point to things like that contributing that docs one that you just showed. I don't know. I could just have them go to that contributing page in the docs site for now. I could just mention, hey, here's a contributing page. In that right now our contributing guide's going through an overall. And that could really just be all I could say. And then when it gets updated in the future, that just can be updated.
Yeah, I think we, at least, so the one at docs.saltstack.com, we now have this new contributor grading bot, and so that's the one that new contributors get sent to because it looked like it was the most comprehensive.
Yeah.
And I believe,
Okay.
I believe, and I'm trying to find my notes on it, but if I remember correctly, we basically want to take the template and structure and stuff that y'all are using for enterprise docs and apply that to the contributor guide. And I don't know if that lives on GitHub or on docs.saltstack.com though. I don't know if we've decided or what the situation is there, but we do need, right now we have 5 different places you can find some form of a contributor guide.
Yeah, I think the goal would be that, and maybe it's just a conversation to also have with Sage, but I think the idea was that GitHub's defaulted contributing guide markdown file could be like a jumping off point, which includes links to like this doc that's most up to date, the contributing one that's in the docs.saltstack one that you just that you posted, Cassandra, because that one does show everything that people do need. It says here's how you set up pre-commit, here's how you get it installed in the repo, salt coding style after the 3000 release, blah blah blah. So it's been updated to a point, and it's also what gets linked to if you go to look at Salt's test suite. It says, hey, go look at, make sure before you start going through, make sure that before you start going through the test suite stuff, you should go to the installing Salt for development and the contributing pages. So I think that's a good default, and I think there just needs to be a jumping off point that lists, at least maybe lists all these contributing pages.
Well, so it seems to me like there's 2 issues here, which is where will it live, who will own it, make sure that it's up to date and stuff like that. and what's the content going to be? Like it's those three kind of questions. And it seems so I don't have an answer to where it should live, like whether it should live on the SALT documentation or some other place. So and I'm agnostic on that. I'll support whatever we decide. And it sounds like in terms of the actual content of it, what we need to do is like I hear there's 5 guides. What we need to do is like merge them and put them into the place where they're going to go. So that involves a research task of just kind of like comparing the guides, identifying what content is similar between them, what's different. If they diverge, which one is considered the authoritative one? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what I think, what I've seen from just a basic look at all of them is that there will be a consolidation of sorts and like a deprecation of some, but they still need to exist separately in a way, because contributing to SALT can rapidly become complex depending on what you're doing, which is why there's a whole different testing guide. And part of contributing is you need to contribute tests. You should contribute tests with your PR if able, because then otherwise other people have to then try to contribute to the test to complete a PR, depending on if it's a code change. And so that's like a different persona. And so the contributing guide, and so that whole SALT testing guide is its own big thing, right? And so linking to it will be good as if someone has to do that as part of theirs. And then, but then there are things like the hacking there's like a hacking file that looks like it was or is a contributing file in the root of the SALT repo that I think is really just duplicated content that exists across some of the other guides. And
All right,
yeah.
So what I'm hearing is it's quite complex because there's different ways to contribute to SALT, which is fair. The piece that we're concerned about that needs to be in place before the first docs clinic and before the doc jam is contributing to the documentation. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so like that's the piece, like if we can do a baby step to get to that piece, to where at least that's clear how to contribute to the docs. I would consider that the minimum viable product for just this component of it. And it sounds like the rest is more complex, which is fair. If we can break down that process, we can do that. But in terms of like, it sounds like we're not going to be able to do like the massive overhaul of the contributor guide before the docs jam because it's bigger than that. But we can probably take care of the documentation side of it, right?
Yeah, I think, and maybe my docs clinic will ultimately be a template for it, because I mean, a big part of this, the reason we're even doing the docs clinic is because there isn't a documented path on contributing to documentation. And so
exactly.
The whole clinic is really a video version of what a documentation contributing guide would be.
Yep. That's what I think too.
Yeah.
It's like the minimum viable doc set for that. So we got a little piece and then we can build it out and grow it into a more mature document.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, how, as we've talked about rehauling this contributor guide, that's how it's going to work, is it's going to be incremental. And I agree. I think it makes sense to, before we go change a bunch of documentation, how do we change the documentation and what does it look like?
Yeah, exactly.
I also have, from a couple of the open hours now and just a couple other conversations I've had on the side, kind of a list of frequently requested document improvements and areas of focus. So that's something that at some point we can focus on in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we were speaking specifically about the contributor guide and the overall experience for new contributors in that conversation. I sat and took notes and was copy pasting quotes and stuff from people in the open hour. So it was a pretty extensive conversation. But
yeah, and I think that's a pretty much a bare minimum, like for any open source project, that you've got to have a solid contributors guide so that people know how to get up to speed with your project. So it sounds like a really good task, really important. And one other quick side thought that I had is and I'm saying this to the salt stack documentation team right now, I think we really should at least have one open salt initiative every cycle. It's something that needs maybe some of our attention. It doesn't have to be big, but maybe just something that keeps it so that we're doing something for it every cycle. But I'm open to disregarding that. But it's just a thought that I have. So anyway.
Sounds like a good idea.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it would be good. Yeah.
Because so often we defer working on it. We're like, we'll get to it. And I don't know, we should probably at least just make sure there's at least one initiative that does something to help open salt every cycle.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, the recurring themes are better documentation. I'm even hearing less of like the communicate better piece, and I'm just hearing the document things better piece.
Yeah, the
Yep.
problem.
So that's some
Yeah.
improvement.
Right, and it's such a multi. What did you say? Call it a multifaceted. It's such a complex. One of the things I was hoping to do during this current release period that isn't really going to happen until during the probably after magnesium, or at least somewhere toward the end of it, is that I really, from a docs improvement perspective, was kind of working on a templating system so that a lot of the new projects coming out of POP that are like item based, for example, can have some kind of minimal viable doc set that includes basic example use cases. How does this work? How do you, and then have them point to our code of conduct that resides in this SALT repository, because our code of conduct is community wide as opposed to just repository wide. And
Hey,
how
Derek,
to boot. Oh, go ahead.
just real fast, could I have a quick chat with you after this meeting or sometime later today about that in item? I don't think it's really germane to this meeting, but I'd love to run a few ideas past you real quick on that.
I would really love that feedback. Yeah, because some of your feedback, actually, I'm working on putting into the Sphinx theme that was related to, hey, we should have good documentation on bootstrapping repos with the Sphinx doc theme. And then in the meantime, I've also been I've been working on an item project called Item Read the Docs, because all of our POP open source projects are publishing their Sphinx docs to read the docs. But we need some automation in place so that they're automatically hitting the API. So we're not using like someone's GitLab account or something to just provide the permissions. And but yeah, no, I would really like to hear from you on that, because I know people want more. For example, I think Tiamat has a very, very basic quick start, and it's kind of a very minimal thing. And people are like, we should really expand this maybe to have more information. And I think a lot of the questions that will get asked of every project will be very similar from a tech writing perspective, and also from a user perspective is, hey, can I get an example on how to use this? Hey, are all the parameters for the functions in an item, for example, I don't know. I need to see how the doc strings are implemented, because I don't know how the help is done in item projects. And then
They're not doing much yet. I've been trying to get us some stuff going. That's part of what I want to talk to you about, is kind of how to standardize that.
Yes, because it totally does need to be done. And because I want it to ultimately be like how Salt Open works, where the docs get built and it crawls through and pulls the doc strings out that would include, yeah, exactly, because it is something that needs to be implemented in every repo. Because when I'm looking at like item AWS, I want people to be able to like go to the docs for item AWS and look at all of them and all of their help and then examples for each of them, much like we're trying to do in Salt. Because that's been one of the huge pieces of feedback in Salt in general. Hey, where are the examples? How's this used? And if the SMEs or the initial developers of these projects aren't putting them by default in every time they're working on a new function, they're going to get missed, and then people aren't going to know how to do it, and it's going to be a similar experience to what people are challenged with right now in Salt Open. So I mean, I think that's going to be one of my initiatives during the next cycle, is get a baseline standard for all of these, because this honestly is going to be a huge problem in the future, no matter what, because we're changing our approach to open source development, right? Because if Salt is one gigantic repo, and since it's one huge repo, it has a ton of built-in modules that the documentation can go through and automatically build from, regardless of the quality. But in the future, since all the repos are going to be separate, item repos are going to all be standalone. There's going to be community contributed ones, there are going to be ones under the SaltStack org. All of them need some kind of documentation standard. And then we'll even need some kind of onboarding process for including either links to or the documentation of community repos in a single documentation site. Because people are going to then run into the problem of going, oh, do I need to now search GitHub for my, like, what item projects there are? Do I need to search GitLab for which ones there are? And are they all going to be in various states of lack of documentation and no standard? And so it's going to be if I was going to vote on an initiative that I'm going to be working on in Salt Open, and I suppose you'd maybe consider that R&D if for the new stuff coming out of POP, that would be my huge thing, because because there's two issues. One is that Salt Open has the tech debt problem of these docs, while all the new POP ones don't yet have a standard and will have the same tech debt if it's not addressed right away. Yeah.
Precisely. I think we're thinking down the exact same lines here. And
Really?
I really feel like we're at a spot where a lot of the item stuff is starting to be, there's been enough work done that we're kind of familiar with what the issues are. And, it's good enough, if we jump in right now and get this going right at the beginning, take the best parts of the Salt documentation, it'll make the this new stuff coming out really, really smooth. And you're right, I hadn't really considered that, but there's a lot of, decentralized type of customizations and habits, I guess, really. It's it'll be good to kind of get organized a little bit. So I think this is a good time for that.
Yeah, no, I would love to chat with you on your thoughts, because it has been enough time that when I made the item read the docs and I was seeing and I was giving feedback back to Tyler and also seeing what feedback's gone into the development of item, it's like through the development of using it, standards are being built right now. And because of like, oh, we found this and here's a better way to do this. Oh, we found this, here's a better way to do this. You're right. It's like right now is totally the time to jump in. And there's actually something I need to ask Wayne about, and maybe someone else on the call might know this. I noticed Wayne I think he was working on a testing docs clinic that I just happened to watch. He was running from the command line, a command that would automatically look at the help documentation. Maybe people on the call know how to use that feature. I can't remember how he used it, but it pretty much, he would run a command and it would dump the RST help documentation out, almost like so that you could just simply see it from the command line. Because I'd want to make sure item had that same help functionality where if you're just typing out, if you're going through an execution module, let's say, that it would be nice to then just dump out the functions help documentation straight to the CLI.
Yeah, I've been talking with, it's been probably a week and a half, but I was talking to Tyler about that. Yeah, there's a few things that we've done in Salt like that, particularly that are really, really handy.
Yeah.
And people coming from Salt will be accustomed to that.
Yes.
And so I want to get that in there by default. It's not there yet. And I think that'll also make these documentation efforts a little easier because it'll be,
Scalable.
Yeah, because if that's included in like base item, for example, or if there's some kind of programming approach that needs to be done in like either new item functions or otherwise, yeah, it'd be great because we'd be able to, there'd be a better future for automated testing in item, because then you'd be able to go, is it properly implementing help stuff? And because that would be the future of onboarding the decentralized documentation, is going, do you meet the minimum required standards? And if not, what do you need to do to improve your docs? And because
like default, when we're running all of our unit tests and stuff, every PR, requires doc strings, requires at least one example, right? So PR tests will not pass assault. So I would like to get that kind of a thing going in all the item and pop stuff.
yes.
And I think we should probably go through and kind of figure out what are the best pieces we've built in Salt, see what we can extract out of that as far as best practices and that automation.
That's a really good point. I think people like Wayne would be really great people to, or other core contributors would be great. Gareth too, for that insight because of the projects he's been working on. Because that would be excellent feedback to have coming right back into item projects, because we have separate documentation even on how do you make an item project, right? And I know we're talking about items specifically rather than other. I mean, that's our main pop project from what I'm seeing. I haven't touched anything related to. I mean, I've looked at Umbra, but I don't know. I don't have a machine learning background, nor would I know how to implement that stuff. But from an item look, yeah, that'd be cool to just have to pull the best standards that we found and to include them in the item documentation, and in our item tooling, if possible, whatever can be possibly included in the base item package that people are using as a dependency. So yeah,
Good conversations.
And so let's make sure we schedule a meeting, Dave, with about
Yeah.
that. I do know that today, I mean, I have a longer meeting right after this, but we could figure something out.
We need to
Okay,
do a
at least-
donut session. No, just kidding.
We can at least get them into like GitLab issues or something documented somewhere too. So yeah.
See, if you join Donut, Derek, you'll automatically be
I
paired
haven't
with
been in
Dave.
there,
You
you know?
should
Yeah, I
join
gotta-
Donut.
You're the only one here who's not in Donut, so
Are
do
you
it.
I
actually
got one of our
eating donuts?
salespeople to join it.
That's awesome, because we don't talk to them enough.
Yeah.
So.
I'm meeting with him and Sage next week in a donut.
Nice. Can I just like wrap up? Like we talked a lot of things. I want to just make sure that we're crystal clear on a lot of them. We're not moving the docs clinic. It is going to be held on September 3rd, correct? Or 30th, not 3rd. We are going to hold the full day documentation jam on October 7th. We are currently planning to do the internal doc jam dry run next week on Tuesday, with at least Cassandra, Derek, me, and looks like Gareth maybe, and we'll try to get Wayne in for the first part of it. And hopefully once we have that piece in place, that will help, and that will kind of serve as a minimum viable doc set for how to contribute to the docs. But if we have time, we can build that out into an official contributing document, like how to contribute to the docs.
I think that the video will, like you said, it'll be a good template to work toward creating the docs. But honestly, I think also whatever feedback we get during the docs jam, because then once we have contributors actually going in and doing stuff, we'll likely have extra.
That's
like,
a totally great point.
Crap, did not think about that kind of things, to be able to have maybe get a documentation contributing.
One last thing I wanted to clarify. I had been taking notes about what the content of the first Docs Jam was going to be, and I don't know that I caught everything. But is it going to be? We're going to talk about how to set up Git and GitHub, how to set up GPG signing, how to find the core documentation, and how to find the module documentation in the doc strings. Is there anything else?
So I'm only going to provide links to a lot of that. So,
Okay.
because so GPG signing, I'm not going to walk through that. I'm going to say, here's the GitHub link. What's up?
You don't have 4 hours.
What's that?
You don't have 4 hours.
Yeah, I don't have going into setting up Git, getting your SSH key figured out, getting your GPG signing figured out. I'm totally not going to do any of those. What
So
I will
you're
do,
just going to talk about, like, you're going to say these are prerequisites. Here's where you can
Yes.
go to learn more. That kind of thing. Okay.
Yep, it'll be here are the prerequisites that should be fulfilled before moving on with the next step, and which would then we'll get into SALT specific territory, where I'd be like opening a docs issue, which pretty much when you're looking at a docs page, there's like a edit on GitHub to even find out the exact page that you're maybe opening an issue on, and then there's going to be, if you're going to make a change with the least amount of resistance to something like an RST document simply in the GitHub browser, and then an easy PR that way. The pipelines would show if anything messes up with a small change like that right away as feedback. And then the other would be, now let's go to local development. If you're bringing down the Git repo after you have all those prereqs, and then following the fork branch method, so that and this is where you would see the doc strings in a Python file, because that's the last piece missing, is that if someone sees docs and they go, hey, this argument isn't even documented, like what does this option do, or this option is incorrectly documented, because I want to make sure they know where to go, because they might just go straight to the RST page and be like, I don't even see it, where's the actual code. So those will be the ones I want to focus on.
I want to, so for how to open a docs issue, I think it would be good if we could spend time in the docs clinic, or at least link to a document that I will volunteer to create if we need it. What makes a good docs issue? Because it's not enough to just be like, I don't like these docs, or these docs don't work.
Yeah.
It helps to say why they don't work, explain the problem, and if you can, say what you would change to fix them and make them better. Like that last piece makes a really big difference.
Oh gosh, that's something I harp on the community with all the time, is like, okay, vent and complain, but propose a solution. And they're
Mhm.
starting to. So I like that. I
Actually-
like reiterating that message.
Wayne brought this up before, and it'd be cool if we had something similar, because he said, hey, on Stack Overflow, for example, there's like a guide on, this is how you open a proper, this is like a standard way of opening a proper question, because they've gotten to the point where moderators will just close questions if they're like, no, not enough info, and then it's just close. and then they'll link them to go here to find out how to open a better issue or question, because yeah, there's everything, and this is for anything even not docs related, right? Where they're saying, what version of Salt are you running on? Like, what systems are you running this on? What other things are going on? Someone might even say, I ran a state file and this didn't work. Well, there could be a whole bunch of other stuff in their state file.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is there. I don't know what they're running. Or they're saying this didn't work with VMware as expected. Well, that now we would need everything from like, okay, what version of vSphere or vCenter or whatever as your targets are you even using? Is there something different there? Because now you're introducing totally different products. So, and this is where docs gets just really hairy, right? Is that when they're saying there's an issue with the docs, there really can be a super multi-layered issue, since Salt works as like a glue to all sorts of different types of infrastructure and products. So yeah, that would be a very long conversation, I think.
Well, but we can get it started. I mean,
Yes.
and I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. So what I want to do, what I'm proposing I'll do, this will be my contribution for this sprint, will be to research that a little bit, like come up with just a really rough draft that can maybe be discussed in the Docs Jam. and then we can further refine it after that, and then put it in the contributors guide. And so it can be a working living document that we add to, but if we can at least have something in place before the first docs clinic, and definitely before the docs jam, I think that would really help.
Yeah. Sounds
So
good.
I'll volunteer to do that for this sprint.
Opening
Awesome.
good
Thank
issue.
you.
Okay, cool. And I will crowdsource it with core team members. So
Cool. And probably Sage or anyone who's been in triage could probably who's ever been to the triage meetings will probably be able to give good feedback. But I think we're at end. For your notes, Elisa, is that were there other things you wanted to clarify before at the end of the meeting here?
no, I will just make a quick mention that I contribute to other open source projects outside of SaltStack, and one of the ones that I'm doing is like a glossary tool that I'm experimenting and could be beneficial for us to kind of like, as I'm building out the tool and trying it out, I'm plugging salt terms into it, and it outputs to JSON format. So maybe we could see if we'll be able to use this to build out a vocabulary of salt terms, because we've had a lot of requests for that too. So
That
just
would be
mentioning
so
that.
useful.
So, all right.
And that also makes me think of a separate subject we'll have to revisit at some point, is the docs writing style guide, because that kind of goes hand in hand a little bit in some
That's
terminology.
something I'm hoping to do in Everest. I'll mention that to the SaltStack docs team at some point, but I'm hoping to take on that too. So, because I care about it. All right, cool.
Alrighty then. Anything else anyone wants to ask or clarify or state before we adjourn or close the meeting here?
Don't think so. Thanks for running it, Derek.
Oh, thank you for setting the agenda up and getting meeting notes logged.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks to everybody who came. See ya.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.